Hey everybody, Dr. Mike Ducey here, Mtfu Longevity Podcast. What number are we on? We are on number 34 already, and seemingly each guest gets better than the last. Even though I don't know, I had Evan Centopani on last time. He's
You're
probably
going down now.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that, but we've got the guru, John Meadows here. A lot of you guys know him, of course, and you've been asking for him. And I would almost call him John Mellows instead of Meadows. He's such a nice laid-back guy, and probably one of the most humble men in the fitness industry. And you can say that true champions are humble, and he is a champion. It took him many tries to get his pro card. I think 18 times, John, or something, or 16,
15, 16, something like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, the points delivered. He doesn't give up. It's just like training. Even a skinny guy like me, training for over 4 decades, and talking to people like John and even Evan. When I was training with Evan, I said, Evan, I guess I've been doing things wrong for 40 years. He goes, nah, now you're just going to do them a little different. So I know you're like him. You're kind of diplomatic. And as long as the point is gotten across. But I've got John here for several reasons. He really has a very strong, calming countenance. And he always delivers the goods. He never speaks disparagingly. He never talks down about anything or anyone. I think that's important. He has a lot of credibility. He owns Granite Nutrition. I think it's about 4 years old. Your company now, John? 3 or 4 years?
We're coming up on 4 years. Yeah,
it's really good, really high grade product. And also Mountain Dog Diet, and that's an app and a website that we'll talk about a little later. He does a lot of his training online and virtually, so you may want to contact him for services there. But you watch his YouTube videos, he's the real deal. So you're not going to be lollygagging along. Now, I spoke to John before we got into this. I said, John, I got a bunch of bullet points here to go over. He goes, I never read messages. So I figured, we could talk about anything, which is good. We don't try to, attack anybody or hit them with questions they don't know are coming. But anyway, John, I watched some of your YouTube videos, and one of the interesting things I saw, I did a lot of training with Frank Zane. I've done some writing with him and stuff, and I always subscribe to his theory. Make lighter weights feel heavy. Now, your muscle, ironically, looks a lot like granite, just like, the name. Well, no, it does. I mean, almost that old man muscle. I'm not going to say you're an old man because I'm older than you, but even still, a lot of times that type of muscle, we wonder how is it built? Is it heavy weight? But with Zane, he always told me, make a lighter weight feel heavy. Now, while it's true, I've never been injured lifting weights. I've never gotten very big. But there is some semblance of truth to, if you go to failure, you can go to lighter weight poundages, just higher reps with the intensity. What can you say about that as far as that versus going heavy, especially for older people who train?
Well, it's an interesting topic you brought up because I just put a YouTube video out 6 hours ago on that exact topic.
I watched it.
Well, I think the science definitively shows that you can train with lighter weights and still achieve muscle growth. So I think the question is, what is lighter? And the studies went all the way down to 20% of your 1 rep max. A lot of them were done at 40%. But as I pointed out in the video, I don't know how practical that is to go that low. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're doing a squat. Let's say you can do 400 pounds on your squat. And let's say you want to do, 30% of your 1 rep max. So, you're going to do 120 pounds. So if you can squat 400 and you're going to use the lightweight approach, and remember, you got to take the lightweight to failure, then you're going to have to go to failure with 120 pounds. So given the example of a squat, you're going to have tremendous cardiorespiratory stress, your heart and lungs, your form might break down that many reps. I guess my point is it's easy to say on paper, you can do great with light weights, but there's other things you have to consider in practicality. Now, let's say you're doing a tricep push down. Yeah, you'd probably be fine. But if you're doing a squat, if you're doing deadlift, now you've got a lot of considerations. And then you have to take into considerations like someone's pain tolerance. When you get up 40, 50 reps, that's a lot of burning, right? I mean, some people just can't handle that level of burning. You've got genetic factors. What about your muscle fiber makeup, fast twitch, slow twitch? What about how quickly can your body clear ammonia? How quickly can you buffer lactic acid? So can you build muscle with light weights? Absolutely. You just have to have the mental constitution for it, and then how do you build it into a program? So it's possible. You just got to think through, okay, how can I make this a reality? What exercises do I pick? How many sets is it realistic to do? If you're going to do 4 sets for legs and you're going to do 4 sets of squats and you're going to end up doing like 40 reps a set, I don't know that I'd call that good programming. But if you're going to do kind of moderate weight and at the end do a set to failure with a leg extension, for example, to finish your workout, okay, that's practical. That'll probably work. So I think what we have is we have a lot of people that read kind of the headlines and they just go, yeah, exactly. So yes, you can, but they don't really think about how to apply it in real life. And so that's kind of my 10,000 foot high level view. Is it possible? Absolutely. But how you program it becomes very challenging.
John, did an interview with Jerry Branham a while back. I'm sure you know Jerry, and he agrees, but he does say that at the same time, the studies he's referenced, I don't have them in front of me, but you can undergo hypertrophy, but you really won't instigate the same type of strength gains with the high rep.
Sure.
Right. Yep. So you agree with that?
100%. That's fact. Yep.
Okay. I've got this comment here. It kind of leads into our next question from Simon Collins. Great to see you on here, John. Hope you're feeling better after your heart attack and you're looking well. We are very happy for that, Simon. And John, you're still here. That's great. Stay alive as long as you can. I want to ask you if you can get into it a little, if you would, because we are, my practice is longevity based. So, age without getting old, if you can do that. And you certainly take the healthy approach to training. At least your philosophy shows that. In fact, it used to be called physical culture, the turn of the century. Those guys were not very healthy, 1900 and after that. The longevity, people didn't live that long. So training, at least in some of the literature, states that people train for health and they happen to become muscular. That was physical culture. Now it's training just to get big and maybe not so healthy. And again, I know you don't subscribe to that premise either, but you had a heart attack. What were you thinking when that was happening to start?
Yeah, so I was in a garage that had a squat rack and a bench press, and I was doing some of my old Louis Simmons dynamic work. So, a lighter weight, 8 sets of 3. And I did 8 sets of 3 on the bench press and, 190 pounds, I think is what I was using. I might have had a band on there too, but it was nothing stressful in terms of weight. So I got up and said, okay, getting ready to do our next exercise. And I felt this crazy pain in my heart or my chest. I felt like someone just shattered my sternum with a hammer. And I thought, man, this is odd. And my first thought was, did I bruise my sternum? Did I drop the barbell into my chest too hard? But if you've ever watched me bench, that's not how I bench. Not that I even bench very often anyway. But anyways, so I'm sitting there wondering, what did I do? Why does my chest hurt so bad? And then I started having a hard time breathing. And that's when it was like, okay, this is something serious. And I was sitting there and my left arm started tingling a little bit. And that's when I was like,
sorry, John, were you alone at the time?
There was one guy with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when my arm started getting a little numb, I was like, this is a heart attack. There's nothing else this can be. And so initially what I told my friend was, can you just take me home? And he looked at me and he's like, are you sure? Are you sure we shouldn't call a squad? And I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure this is serious. Go ahead and call the squad. I mean, hey, worst case scenario is they tell me I'm fine. But so he dialed, and the ambulance showed up, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later. And they put the EKG on me and I could see it. And I said, what's going on? The guy said, you're having a heart attack right now. So to answer your question, what was going through my mind? The first thing that went through my mind was there were 2 things that went through my mind. So one of them was, this sucks. My kids are going to have to grow up without a dad. That's the number one thing that kept going through my mind. Like, this absolutely sucks. And then number 2 was I didn't envision my life ending in a garage. Like, I didn't think I would just die in an old garage, lifted. Like, that's not how I wanted my life to end. So those are the 2 things that went through my mind. And they eventually got me to the ambulance and they were taking me to the hospital. And They gave me 5 baby aspirin, said chew these up. Then they gave me a nitroglycerin tablet, to dilate your blood vessels. And I said, am I going to live, to the guy that had me still hooked up? And he said, yeah, but it's a really good thing you called us as soon as you did. So, that's what was going through my head was, man, this sucks. My kids aren't going to have a dad. And then it was like, man, what a crappy way to end my life was what I was thinking. But then once we got to the hospital, I thought, okay, we pulled up and they took me straight into the cath unit. And there were, 5, 6, 7 people waiting. So I thought, well, this is good. They got a lot of people waiting to take care of me. So I know I'm going to get taken care of. So I thought, okay, all right, well, this is a good sign. People are waiting. So they stuck the swab in my nose to see if I had COVID or not. Then boom, he stuck the, I don't know if you can see this. Let me see right here.
Yep.
You can't see it, but he stuck the cat.
I know
in
the
there.
area. Yep.
And he said, yeah, you got a blood clot. And so, long story short, they gave me an IV of heparin to kind of melt the blood clot. And it took probably a day and a half. And in the meantime, I was in a lot of pain. But the blood clot was 100% blocking the left ascending artery, the widowmaker, which is not good. That's like the worst place it could have been.
Yeah.
And then I had a small branch off of that was blocked too. But the main one came unblocked. They did the transesophageal electrocardiogram where they stick the camera down your throat. And so they did all these things. And he said, this has, you don't have any significant plaque in your heart. Your heart's normal size. But there's a problem. We had, there's a blood clot. So now what we have to figure out is just keep me from having blood clots. So that's where we're at.
Family history?
Yeah, my mom died at a real early age, in her early 50s. But honestly, she was a drug addict and alcoholic. So it's kind of hard for me to say, she had a heart attack in her 30s, but she lived such a hard life. It's kind of hard for me to say, yeah, she had heart problems too. She could have just done that to herself. And then my biological dad, I never saw, never met him. Rumor has it that he died in his early 40s of a heart attack. So potentially there's definitely some genetics there.
John, I salute you, not just as a successful person, but as a human and your humanity, because I didn't know that about your mom until you just told me about it. I was reading on one of your posts. You have twin boys, right?
Yes.
And how old are they?
11.
Yeah, you had a picture of them eating ice cream, and you said, it's kind of sad in a good way. You said, I want to make sure my kids grow up the way I didn't grow up because of a father. You didn't really speak badly of your father, but he just wasn't there. You never saw him. And then, you had these difficulties with your mother. I mean, the world is harsh for everyone, but there's different gradients and different ways that people rise to it. And you've really risen, because I don't look at you just as a successful person in business. To be successful, you must cultivate a strong sphere of influence where you're helping many people, and you do. And to get rid of the stuff that invariably clouds your mind from the things you grow up. When you're a kid, you should have an enjoyable childhood, not one that you have to endure. And I'm not saying that was you necessarily, but it certainly didn't sound like Ozzy and Harriet. And you know what I mean. I mean, you put it out there, and I hope people look deeply. Even it's kind of almost a metaphor for a guy who's heavily muscled like you, or Evan, or any of these guys. And there was one day with me where if you got in the right light and angle and you squinted your eyes and you were 100 yards away, I actually looked good at one time and had some muscle. But, to build all that, and we always go over this, Zane calls it muscular armor, emotional armor. And sometimes you build that to buttress yourself against, whatever it is that you had to deal with. But, you had your mother. She had a lot of problems, so maybe you didn't know your whole health history. But Simon brings this point up. It ties into this. How has the heart problem affected your training now, and how will you train in the future from here on out, if different at all?
Well, right now, I try not to let myself get out of breath.
I don't know if I lost you. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't push myself as hard right now for a couple of reasons. I'm trying not to get out of breath. And then I don't do the Valsalva maneuver. So when you kind of hold your breath and power through reps. So I'm trying to just not put stress on my heart. Now, I've gotten stronger and stronger. I only took 16 days out of the gym after my heart attack. I've been back. So
Wow.
I'm working my way back, and I feel good, but I'm in no hurry. So I just keep working my way back. Each week I do a little more. Today I actually did a couple sets where I pushed a little bit hard, not crazy hard, but just to push. So I think I'm probably back by 80%. You know, the real story will be in August when I get an echo done on my heart, and that tells you very succinctly, you know, what is your ejection fraction, how strong is your heart. It'll let me know if my heart is in bad shape or if it's in fine shape. It could be either or. I don't know. I feel really good, so I'm optimistic. But so yeah, I pulled back. But once my heart is full go, I'll probably pick the intensity back up. But will it be like all out crazy intensity? You know, not just nuts. You know, I don't know about that. But we'll see. But my plan isn't to go easy the rest of my life. I can tell you that, unless I have to. If I have to, fine. But if the doctor says, here, look, here's your scan, your ejection fraction is back to 55 or 60% or 65%, whatever, you're good to go, crush it, then I will train harder. So we'll see. We'll see. I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't have a little bit of fear in there that I might do something. Because when I say go crazy, I mean like go crazy. I mean like do a set that puts you on the floor. So whether I do sets like that, we'll see.
When you say fear, because I was going to ask you this, is there a little fear of doing like a real heavy, intimidating set, or fear of something that might go wrong? That's number one. And number two, what was the doctor's advice looking at you as a guy who's, jacked? Sometimes they misinterpret or they don't understand, and they'll just say, rather superfluously, they'll say things like, oh, you got to stop that or whatever, which doesn't really make any sense.
Well, I think that I got the standard post-heart attack protocol, which is an ACE inhibitor, a beta blocker, a calcium channel blocker, and then on one side, a blood thinner, Plavix, and then baby aspirin, and then a statin. Like that's what they give everybody that has a heart attack. And then he said, I want you to start walking, just walk a little bit. And then he said, after 2 weeks, we'll pick up the intensity on the walking. We'll talk about lifting weights in the future, but right now I just want you walking a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, I think I'm capable of more than that, but okay. So I started walking and the first week, and it did knock me out, man. 30 minutes of walking took my breath out, and I would come home and go right to sleep and take a nap. But then after, like I said, 16 days, I was like, I'm pretty sure I can lift light weights. Like I can just lift some light stuff. So I went in, I was fine. So then I told him when I went to my checkup, I said, it's been 2 weeks now. I've been lifting weights. And he's like, well, how do you feel? I said, I feel fine. I get a little lightheaded sometimes. We ended up dropping the calcium channel blocker pretty quickly. And that helped a lot, actually. That helped a lot. I don't get nearly as dizzy since we dropped that. My blood pressure was running way too low, 100 over 60. And now it's back up to like 115 over 75 is normal. So I think he was like a little taken aback that I was already back in the gym. But when he saw I was doing okay, he was like, okay, well, you seem to be doing fine. So you're okay. But I think I got just the standard, you had a heart attack. Here's what we do for people to have a heart attack. And, I think, when I went into his office, honestly, it was depressing. And the reason why it was depressing was because everybody in there waiting their turn was probably 80 years old. And I don't mean that disparagingly toward people who are 80. I just meant that, I'm 48. I'm not even 50. And look at where I'm at. And it was depressing. It was very depressing. So I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't a good feeling. But so that's where we're at now.
I think, John, you work hard, on your health, on your physicality, your whole life. You're fastidious, you're conscientious, strategic in what you do. You're a scientist of yourself. Yeah, and it is a slap in the face when something, I've had some health issues too, and you go in there and sometimes you're amidst a sea of people who either don't abide by that lifestyle, which is most people, or they're a lot more further afield of age. And, you know, man, it throws you for a loop. Our good friend Evan has his animal meal, and we had him on. We were talking about that, and he puts a lot into it. He's very, you know, he has a hand in developing it, and he's big on digestion. It can't make you feel upset. I know your supplement company. I watched a lot of your videos and your product, and it seems very high grade, and people speak really well of it. And you seem overly conscious of making sure it is what it is. You know, you're not. There are people in the industry that just throw things out there to make a quick buck. Anybody can do that, but staying power and believability and people liking you and consistency over time, that's the key. So what about these supplement companies? There's so many of them. What are some of the lies they tell people?
Well, I can get myself sued here.
No, that's why I kind of laugh. Just, you know, you could take that any way.
Well, I mean, I can give you, so if you know my history, I don't know if this was 4 or 5 years ago. I was working with a company called Prime Nutrition, and Evan and I were both a part of that company. Actually, Evan is the one who recruited me to be a part of that company. And Aaron Singerman was kind of the primary owner, and the manufacturer was Dirk Labs. That's who made the products. And I was a complete newbie in terms of manufacturing practices and what goes on. Like, I really had my head in the sand. Like, I just didn't know. I'd never been exposed to that stuff. And I had developed a product for them that sold really well, and it was doing really well. I'm
sorry, John, when you say you developed it, you actually formulated or put together the chemistry behind it, or just the building block?
The formula, you know, this is the amino acid profile I want you to use. This is how many grams of cluster dextrin I want you to use, and this is the electrolyte profile I want you to use. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to keep this short, but long story short, I had some friends telling me they were getting an upset stomach from it, and I said, that's not right. That shouldn't be happening. You know, they're getting blood sugar swings and all this stuff. And I said, you know, I think what they're doing is they're taking the cluster dextrin and replacing it with probably straight dextrose or maltodextrin, because those are dirt cheap.
Yes.
You know, dirt cheap. So what I ended up doing was getting several products tested, and I sent them to the Golden Triangle, I think was the name, but they were very, very good company for testing. And the products showed that they didn't have what the label said, right?
Wow.
Each products had my name on it. So, you know, I said, I'm going to have to let the consumers know. And, you know, I was told, well, I'm going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, man, my reputation is more important to me than anything. So I exposed them. The company, you know, the owner kind of scrambled, left, started another company. And there's so many things that go on. There's, you know, the protein spiking that used to happen. I don't know if that happens anymore, but they used to just put random cheap aminos in there, so the amino count came up, and so they could say, well, we have 25 grams of protein a serving, but it wasn't really a good amino profile. And now I can tell you for a fact, I've seen tests of certain mixes that are supposed to be blends. Oh, we've got beef, we've got salmon, we've got all this stuff, and they're 99% one ingredient, and everything else comprises 1%, the other 1%. So that's, to me, that's very misleading. And, you know, and the guy in that lab that ran Dirk Labs, there were two guys. One of them went to prison. The other one is I got to be careful what I say. He went to another company. He's still manufacturing. And ironically enough, it's for a company that makes more of like health type supplements, which is very ironic, right? That somebody would be doing that with the criminal history that he has. But hey, they're in stores, you know, they're doing their thing, they're making money. How does it make me feel as a business owner? It makes me very disappointed in the industry. So there's still a lot of, like, if anybody thinks we're in the clear now in the supplement industry, they're mistaken. There's still manufacturers out there. There's still people who are formulating products that are incredibly misleading, saying, you know, this is a great blend of all these different things, when really it's 99% of the cheap ingredient. You know, but I don't, you know, I got my own problems to worry about, so I don't really talk about it a whole lot anymore.
Yeah,
So
I had Rick Collins on here. You know, attorney Rick
I
Collins.
know Rick really well. Yeah.
He's a good guy, and you know, we even went over it. I mean, the policing of the industry is kind of spotty, I would say, right? As far as
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And then there's so many levels to this. Like if you say, oh, I've got the test to show everything's in here, well, that's just one batch. Like anybody can make a batch perfect, test it, and have the piece of paper and put it on the internet and go, look, our product's perfect. You know, that's the same thing the guys used to do making underground gear. They used to test, oh, look how this has got all the testosterone in it that we say. They get it tested to show everybody, and then they start making junk once they have shown. Anybody can do that. You know, a company that does a really nice job is NutriBio. So NutriBio has a thing where you can check every batch of every product. Now that's a company that you can feel really, really good about. In order to do that, it's quite expensive. It's very expensive. You know, you won't find any of the smaller companies doing that, testing every single batch, every single, I mean, but you know, that's a company that, you know, I have zero affiliation with them, but I respect what they're doing. I respect where their values are and what they bring to the table. So I would rather model our company after somebody like that, as opposed to somebody who has, you know, 20 of the best athletes out there and great marketing, but you and I both know the products are poor at best. You know, when they're doing BOGOs nonstop, like if their business model is nonstop sales, what does that tell you about the quality, the formulation, like the ingredient cost? And if they can make money and lots of money to pay all those athletes running sales constantly, that means their cost of goods has to be really low,
I
right?
like what you. I heard you say one thing. You said, "Listen, I ain't cheap," and you didn't mean that in you know, in other words, you don't jack up prices unnecessarily, but you know, you get what you pay for. And quality is always very important. And like you're saying, it's hard to find it. John, what would you say if you have a specific philosophy on, you know, people gravitate to you for certain reasons. They like your physique, your style, your philosophy. What would you say it is in a nutshell as far as training goes?
I think it's number one, it's a hardworking approach. But it's an approach that's very well thought out. So you might see me do a set on a YouTube video where you go, oh my God, look how crazy he is. But if you see it in the context of how the whole workout is structured, then it makes sense. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can see why he's doing that now. I think there's kind of been a trend the last 5 or 10 years to go easier, to not go as hard. And I'm very anti.
I'm sorry, John. Why do you think that is, though?
Well, I think people are always looking at excuses to do the least amount possible. You know, I think that, you know, if you look at like I can speak from training in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I can speak from what I saw. Of course, I don't have NASA spy satellites spying over everybody in the world that's training, but I can tell you that the atmosphere is different in general now. I think people, like if you said the word overtraining in the 80s and 90s, people would be like, overtraining, what's that? All you knew was you went into the gym and you trained hard, right? You trained really hard. And maybe in some cases they did too much, but they weren't afraid of hard work. And now I think sometimes people take science and they twist it to go, well, you shouldn't be taking anything to failure. And well, you're going to drain your CNS from doing that hard set. Like people look for reasons to do less. And listen, there's still a lot of bodybuilders that train really hard. So I don't want to make it sound like nobody trains anymore. That's not true. But there is a lot of people out there that just think if you see somebody doing a hard set, oh, he's doing too much. Oh, the only reason he's doing that is because he's taking 2,000 mgs a test. The only people just don't want to acknowledge that hard work is still key, and it is still key. And, you know, I have had to change the volume, the amount of sets I've done, but I still do those hard sets that, you know, your life flashes before your eyes like, man, whoo, I didn't know I could do that. You know, I enjoy it. For me, it's fun. Like to see how far I can push myself is a fun thing. But so, you know, I think if to sum up my approach in training, it's a hard approach, but it's how do you apply the intensity? Like How many sets do you do like that? What kind of exercises do you do? Do you squat to failure? No, that's probably not a good idea to squat until literally your legs give out and you drop the bar. But could you do a leg extension to failure? Of course you could. You know, so it's a way of maximizing intensity, but also maximizing longevity and safety.
That's important. Yeah, the vomit buckets with the squats I was mentioning. I think Evan had picture Evan, you know, kind of losing it over.
Oh yeah, I remember that day well.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a day. It's not a regular basis. That's good. Speaking of spy satellites, and I heard you on another YouTube video, and obviously you don't see what everyone's doing, so you don't assume anything. But this question here, one of the titles of one of the podcasts was bodybuilders will have more major health problems in the next few years. And again, you not knowing exactly what everyone's doing, but what do you mean by that when you say that?
Well, first of all, it sounds awful ironic that I'm the one that had the problem saying that. So I do have a lot of embarrassment right now.
Oh, no, I'm not trying to elicit that at all.
Yeah. No. You raise a good question. I'm just telling you personally how I feel. But what I said still stands. I got an email about a week ago from a guy who just started training with me, and I said, you know, what are you doing training wise, nutrition wise? Are you taking any chemicals? It was 2 grams of test. It was a gram of Tren, a gram of Masteron, 200 milligrams of Winstrol, 200 milligrams of Proviron, Letrozole, Arimidex, and there were some other things that I can't think of.
Hey John, that wasn't Pete Gronkowski, was it?
It might have been the whole bottle of D-ball. That's what he used to say he took, right?
No, I talked to him. Just a quick segue. 9 3cc shots of, let's just call them liquids, and 5 bottles of 100 dose pills per bottle a day. So
yeah,
and I've had different people corroborate that, but that's Pete, and he's still alive, God bless him. But I'm sorry, I digress here.
No. I don't get me started on the old stories, because I love talking stories like him. And you know, Mitchell was crazy too, right?
What's that?
Steve Michalak. You
know, we got John Defendis. John Defendis on my board here, and you know, he trained with him, so he'll talk about that all. He'll probably come in here and start yakking about it. Oh yeah, that was real, man.
Yeah. John had one of the craziest physiques. I loved his physique when he won the USA.
88.
Yeah, I mean, so that was a guy. The doses I just gave you, that was for a guy who hasn't even won a state title yet. All right, so I get emails like clients go from coaches to different coaches, like they switch a lot.
Oh yeah.
So we all know what everybody else is doing.
John, like all the coaches. Why do they do that, do you think?
Because coaches sell that they have the magic formula. Like magic formula. I have only asked one guy of the thousands of clients I've worked with over all the decades. I've only asked one guy to work with me, a guy named Josh Wade. I said, I saw him at the Arnold Classic. I said, Josh, I know your physique. Your physique. I know that I can get you to the pro level quickly, and you can do well. And he signed up with me, and he got to the pro level, and he started placing immediately in pro shows. He's the only guy I've ever asked to work with me. A lot of these other guys are combing the backstage areas. They'll see a guy, great genetics, and they'll sell him a story. I know exactly what it takes to get you there. Then they go to the next person. And hey, listen, you know, I'm not necessarily hating on them, because they're just trying to sell their services, and that's what they do for a living. But me personally, just going around kind of like trying to handpick the genetic elites, the people who already look good, and then go, oh, look at my guy. You know, I had a guy that I trained, this has been probably 3 or 4 years ago. I had him getting ready for a pro show, and he looked awesome. Then the last week, he just disappeared. And I messaged him, I'm like, middle of the week, I was like, dude, you haven't checked in at all. And he's like, yeah, I decided to go with this other coach. I'm like, dude, we're in the last week before the show. And he's like, yeah, but you didn't want to change anything the last week, and this other guy has a formula for me. I said, I didn't change anything because you are ready right now. And he did the show. He looked the same that he had looked, which was good. And he got second place in a pro show. But that's kind of what it's like. These coaches like kind of sneak in, and if they see any hints of doubt, they kind of sneak in and go, "Hey, I got the formula for you." That's not how I sell my services. I don't even sell my services. I just work off my reputation. But anyways, that was to answer your question. But anyways, these clients, they go coach to coach, and as they come to you, they say, "Here's what I did before," and I got to just be like, "Oh my God, really? He had you doing all this?" And I don't say anything. I don't go post it on Facebook and go, "Look what this coach is doing." I don't care. That's their own thing. And ultimately, it's up to the client. Like, you're agreeing to take all that, so you got to bear some of the responsibility as well. But we see it. We know what's going on, and I know what some of the older guys did. I've sat down. I've talked to many of the older guys, and did everybody in the 80s and 90s take low doses? No, I'm not going to say that. That's silly. Like, we all knew Nasser took a lot. There's exceptions, but as a general rule, generally speaking, what was taken back then and what is being taken now is completely different. It's two totally different levels. You get guys that used to take the Parabolin made by Negma from France. They would take 2 ampules a week or 3, which is roughly 150 to 225 milligrams a week of trenbolone. Now, if you tell someone now, "I want you to take 200 mgs of tren," they laugh at you. They go, "Man, I thought 600 is what I had to take. And these other coaches have me doing 1,000. And I'm just like, okay, but that's how it's changed. And so it's disappointing to me. Like, I love to experiment. I've tried about everything you can try. There's a couple things I didn't have the guts to try, but I love to experiment just like the next guy does. But at some point, you got to have some common sense, and you got to say, okay, this is doing nothing but risking my health and giving me side effects. But again, some people just, for whatever reason, they do whatever. And like I said, it's a free country. Do whatever you want. If you want to take 10 grams a week, hey, more power to you. I'm just not going to do that with you myself. So,
That being said, one thing you mentioned, you were always very strong. You were able to squat 500 when you were in high school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you started training that early. Did you know you had potential, or were you just strong, or did you think of bodybuilding early on, or were you playing sports, or what were you doing way back then?
So I started lifting when I was 12 years old, and I was looking at all the magazines, 1984, 1985. Lee Haney won the Mr. Olympia in 85. That's when I really started. That was his second Olympia. That's when I really started following it. That's when Beckles got second. He was like 55 years old back then. He got second place in the Olympia.
Yep.
Gaspari had just won the Nationals the year before. He comes out and he gets third place at like 21, 22 years old.
Yep.
Fourth was Muhammad McCaw. You remember him, the Egyptian?
Remember all of them, yep.
Christian got fifth. Barry DeMay got sixth. Platts got seventh. Sergio Oliva got eighth. Bob Paris got ninth. And Frank Richard got 10th. That was the show that really got me interested in bodybuilding, because I wanted to look like either Lee Haney or Tom Platts. Like, those were the two that I was like, I really like those two. Lee Haney just was amazing. And I then a year or two later got to see a seminar with Tom Platts. He came to Columbus, Ohio, and he did a seminar, and I got to see him and I got to hear him talk, and he was incredibly intelligent. And I thought, man, these bodybuilders, they're like really smart dudes. So I really dug into kinesiology. And I mean, I really, really got into it. I really got into training hard. And, the only way I could get routines was looking at magazines. So, the magazines would say, this is what Tom Platts does for his legs. So I'd be like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. This is what Lee Haney does for his back. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I just modeled what all those guys were doing at 13, 14, 15 years old, thinking, that's the right way to train. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, probably wasn't, but I still worked hard, really hard. I had a really good work ethic. And I was, in my mind back then, I already wanted to be a pro. Like, that was cemented in my mind from the time I did my very first contest. I wanted to be Mr. Ohio, and I wanted to be a pro. Those are my two goals. And then later, when the Arnold Classic got added in 1988, I think it was, I wanted to do the Arnold Classic. So I believed that I could do it. And I put a lot of work into it. And then along the way, a lot of doubts obviously creeped into my mind, losing all those pro qualifiers. And you start to question yourself. I never questioned my work ethic. I never questioned that ever. I never questioned whether I was doing the right stuff, training, nutrition, what have you. I questioned my genetics, though. Maybe I just don't have the genetic makeup to be a pro. And luckily I overcame that, but I'd be lying to you if I told you that I didn't have any doubts along the way. But what I did was I just kept working because I love it. I love to train. So I just kept working a little bit better. Then when the time's right, and you hit it. So.
John, when did you know? Because, I was talking to Evan, because I see Evan a lot. He's over at Powerhouse in New Haven. I met you there. I don't know if you remember me that day. I came up to you at the counter there. And you're very nice, just like you are here. So sometimes you walk up to guys, and they disappoint you. They're not like they are in celluloid. I usually know who to stay away from. But that being said, Evan was telling me, I was just asking him some questions, and he says, Mike, listen, I was about this size by the time I was 20. And Cutler said the same thing. A couple other guys, and he wasn't even talking about the amount of drugs. That wasn't really even the issue, because I don't think it is. And he said, you're just going to know pretty early on, whether you have it or not, as far as that size thing goes. So did you have that within you, or you just kind of knew that you were gonna make it? Because you have to really you can't believe it. You have to know it. It's just got to be ingrained in you.
Yeah. Well, so here's what happened to me. When I was 20, I was winning all the men's shows in Ohio, like the overalls, like men's open shows. I was winning all in Ohio when I was 20. So I thought, I'm going to be a pro, no doubt about it. Okay. And then in 1998, I went to the Nationals. And that's the year that Jason Arnst won, actually. And I got smoked. I got destroyed. There was 42 or 44 guys in my class. I didn't make the top 15.
How'd you feel that day when that happened? Just as a quick aside, how'd you feel right after that when you went there?
I was mad. So here's what happened. I was mad. Good. I was like, "There's no way 15 light heavyweights are better than me." And then I got the pictures back, and I said, "Wow." There were probably 25 light heavyweights that were better than me. I don't know if that top 15 would have been top 20. I don't think I'd have made the top 20. Like, I legitimately got my butt kicked.
So you were being honest. You were looking at those photos and you could tell.
Well, the guy right beside me got 14th place. A guy named, I think his name was Scott Shoemaker, and he destroyed me. He crushed me in every pose, and he got 14th. He barely made the top 15.
John, what year was that?
1998 in Atlanta.
The Junior USA?
No, well, the Junior USA I did in New Jersey, and I got 6th.
Yeah, I see that.
There was a little short monster dude named Warren James that won the middleweight and the overall. He was a beast. And the guy that won the light heavy, I think Rob Lopez won the light heavies.
Light heavy was Warren James. Heavyweight was Daryl James. Super heavyweight Kevin Holly. Middleweight Dwayne McDaniel.
Dwayne. So Dwayne ended up moving up to the light heavies, and he made the top 15 in the light heavies at nationals, I believe. But Warren James was a beast. He ended up going down. Well, he ended up being the top 3 at nationals. I don't know if it was that year, but he was a top guy. He was good.
You're talking about Warren James?
He was good. He was really, really good.
Yeah, he ended up taking 3rd in the nationals, and after that, 2nd in nationals in 2000. Then he, took a long layoff. But right up there.
He was amazing. But with that show, I thought I should have placed higher. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to nationals. And then when I went to nationals, like when I saw those pictures, it made me realize how far I had to go. Like, I had some years where I thought, I got this in the bag, I'm going to be a pro. But when I did that first pro show or pro qualifier, it really put into perspective of how far I still had to go. I wasn't knocking on the door. I was binoculars trying to find a house. Like, I had a long way to go. I weighed 197 pounds, 196 pounds for that show. I came back the next year at 207 as a heavyweight out of nowhere, and I got 4th. I completely changed my look from November to July. And then I thought, okay, now I'm in the top 5 at the USA. That's the year Melvin Anthony won. Like, that's really good. Like, now I'm in the top 5. So now I got it, right? That was 1999. So in 2000, I think I'm going to win. I get 8th. 2001, I blow it the last 2 days and I get 13th. 2002, I go to nationals, shred it out of my mind. I get 10th, but I did beat Sean Roden. He got 12th.
You beat who? Sean Ray?
Sean Roden.
Oh, Roden. Oh, wow. That's
and
cool.
So 2003, I took off. And so I had a lot of years where it was like, okay, I just don't think I have it in me. And of course, I had the disease in 2005 and all the surgeries. And in 2012, I came back at Masters Nationals. I just turned 40, and I had put on a lot of muscle. I had a great year, and I got second place. And I thought, and you know what? If I wouldn't have done well at that show, I probably would have said, okay, now it's time to hang it up. But it was a disputed second place. So I thought, okay, I am on the edge. So, and then when I won I was already coaching a lot of pros, and the pros were telling me, John, you can compete against pros. Like, you may not have your pro card, but you're good enough to compete against pros. So when I got my pro card, I went straight into the pro shows. I got a 5th place in my first show, which probably could have been a 2nd place if I wasn't an idiot trying to make weight. And then the next show 2 weeks later, the Tampa Pro, I got 3rd place, and I beat 2 or 3 guys that were in the Mr. Olympia. And then I went to San Antonio and I got 5th place. So I immediately went to 3 pro shows and I placed in all 3 of them. So I knew that if I could just get my pro card, I would be competitive as a pro.
John, speaking of gurus and coaches, when you had this baptism of fire, meaning you're winning everything on a state and regional level, then you went to the nationals and it was such a disparity. Do you think people just weren't coaching you or telling you the true deal, or you weren't around the right pool of people who understood what it took, and then you were shocked when you went there, or you just weren't training right? I won't say hard enough, because I'm sure the effort was there.
That's a great question. I remember when I went to the 1998 nationals, I remember guys asking me if I was taking growth hormone, and I had never taken it in my life. I remember that. I probably wasn't doing nearly what everybody else was doing. The people who were doing the most in the 90s around that era were the amateurs, because it was so hard to get a pro card. And if you got a pro card, like, you only got the overall at the USA, the nationals. The nationals, you just had to win your class, but you had to get the overall at the USA and the North American. So there were so few pro cards given out. There was such depth and talent at the national level. That's the guys who were pounding the drugs, because they were at that last step, the last possible barrier. And they were so good. Like, you could take a guy that got 6th to nationals and he looked phenomenal. There was this guy named Ronnie Adams. I'll never forget it. And I remember one year he got 6th and he looked amazing. I was like, my God, these guys are so good. They would win the USA. Then they would go and they'd be winning. Like, there was a guy here locally, Mike Francois. Mike got 3rd in the USA. Then he went to nationals and he won. He goes out and he starts killing the pro shows. There's a guy named Porter Cottrell. Porter won his pro card.
Porter was on here. Porter's great.
Yeah, he goes and he starts winning pro shows.
Yeah.
Kevin Levrone, he wins his pro card. He starts winning pro. Like, the guys with Flex Wheeler, he wins USA. He starts killing pro shows. Like, the top guys were so good. They would just go right into see what you have now. You just don't have the depth. And back then, like, you could look at, like, the year I got 8th at the USA in 2000. The depth in that class was unreal. It was unbelievable. I was better than the year before when I got 4th, and I dropped to 8th. Whereas now you get like 1 or 2 guys in a class that are really good, maybe 3, and then you just see this drop off.
Hey, John, when you say 2 things, you say depth and you say really good. And I'm talking about the disparity from what the time you're talking about back in the day to now. And there's 2 guys versus a depth of 12 that could trounce them. What is the difference? Is it detail? Is it density?
2 things. So, number one, there's a lot more pro cards given out, which depletes the talent, right? Okay. So you got 2 guys in each class at the nationals. You got all the Masters shows, and they keep adding more and more Masters pro cards. You've got the USA every class pretty much. I think maybe it's the top 4 in the overall, the top 4 at the North American. So there so many more pro cards that are given out. It depletes the talent. Talent's not stacking up. That's number one. Number 2, the guys had more detail back then. They had more muscle separation. They weren't bigger and they weren't leaner than the guys now. The top guys, the Olympia now, are very big and they're very lean, but they're so big they blur the detail. Like, if you look at Sean Ray, 210 pounds, Rich Gaspari, 211 pounds, Tom Platz, 213 pounds. Leela Broad, 180 pounds. Flex Wheeler, when he won a 93 Arnold, was somewhere around 220. But if you look at the detail of those guys, the muscle separation, it looks amazing. But you have guys now, the judges have required, they want people to be bigger. That's who wins. So these guys crank so much growth hormone and insulin, they definitely get bigger, but they lose that intricate detail. Now,
So
me, I like
you,
the detail. Like
you, not to patronize you, but you have that.
I started to lose it though. I mean, if you look at pictures of me when I was naturally 212 versus when I competed in the 212, I was a little different. I had to lose a lot of muscle and fat to get there, so I didn't look as good. But me at a little bit lighter weight, I had better separation. I had striations in my quads. I had cross striations in my hamstrings and calves that looked kind of freaky. But when I started competing in the 220s, I actually competed at 226 at all those master shows I did. I was very big, and I was lean, but I didn't have the same level of detail. I liked the way my body looked when I was a little bit lighter.
John, the brutally hard training and the soul devouring dieting aside, at what size and body weight do you feel the best at?
I would always feel awesome at 219, 220. I felt great, Now it's a little different. I'm in a little different situation. So not competing, how do I'm 213 pounds now. When I went into the hospital, I was about 223. So I'm lighter now. I feel real athletic now. I feel real good. I have good movement, mobility. But back when I was competing, I really liked the way I felt and looked around 220. I felt like when I was heavier than that, I just couldn't move. I just didn't feel great. And then when I was lighter than that, like when I had to make 212, I just felt horrible. I just felt depleted and just beat up. So like for me, I'm 5'7", 5'6.5", 5'7". About 220 is where I felt like a straight beast, maybe even 218, 207. And I think about like how small I feel right now at 213. And I think about when I competed as a light heavyweight, I looked pretty good then. Like, I don't think I looked terrible.
You just got to wear the dry fit shirts like I have, and you'll always feel big. Nothing fits.
Yeah. I was talking to my friends the other day, and I said, man, 200 pounds sounds so small to me right now, but I used to compete at 197 though. And like, I looked good. I didn't look terrible, So, but generally speaking, I just think that the bodies that are a little bit lighter can potentially show more muscle separation, which to me looks more like a statue of somebody. You know,
the statue moves. I remember a Frank Zane article that said the statue moves, and this was when he could win the Mr. Olympia at 190 pounds. That is no more. We got about 7 minutes left here. And I want to go a little bit into this question that this member addressed here. Jeff Nippard is a big inspiration for me, being a natural bodybuilder. And I know you guys discuss a lot on this topic. How do you see the future for true natural bodybuilders, John?
Well, the natural organizations aren't, I don't really follow them. I used to, and they weren't real competitive. I have a lot of friends that coach naturals, that compete naturally. And so first of all, for the natural coaches, I have tremendous respect for those guys because they have to think about problems and solve them without just throwing drugs at the issue. So first of all, the guys who coach natural people, I have tremendous respect for them. And I think in many ways, they're better than the coaches who coach people who are enhanced. They're better at solving problems. They're better at pushing people harder because they know they have to. They can't just say, "Oh, take another 50 micrograms of T3." They have to be tougher. They have to be better, right? As far as competitors go, I just don't follow the organizations. As far as natural bodybuilding goes, competition aside, forget that. Just in terms of opportunities and things like that, I think there's a lot of opportunity now. If you look at social media, if you look at natural bodybuilders and the hype that they get, the opportunities that they get, I think there's a lot of opportunities to be successful as a natural bodybuilder outside of the competition part of it. So, I spent 8 years training natural, and I've always had a lot of respect for those guys. But I think the future is bright because I think there's so many opportunities on social media and with companies now looking for people who are more natural and have a more of a pleasing look to their bodies. So I think the future is great.
You know, even Rich Gaspari, I was out training at his corporate headquarters, and I actually asked him about that, and he says, "Listen, I happen to know that Frank Zane doesn't like my style of physique," and he said it in a good way. It wasn't like adversarial or anything, but you know, even Gaspari said his marketing is more geared towards the Lith classic physique type because it's a bigger market. And I don't think the kids necessarily want to put in all, again, not to berate them for lack of work ethic, but you know, to get that big, it takes a lot longer. You know, I guess. Yeah. Would you agree? You think, or?
Well, there's a lot of facets to that conversation. You know, like if you want to look like Ronnie Coleman, first of all, you've got to understand that his genetics are 1 in a billion. So that's probably not going to happen for you.
No.
But you know, and then so you've got the drug side of it. So a lot of guys will just assume that you need to take a ton of drugs to be really, really big. And that is genetic as well. You've got some guys that respond really, really well to drugs. And then you've got guys, local dudes in your gym that have never competed, taking 1,000 milligrams of tests, and they don't even look like they lift weights. So,
true.
You know, so there's a lot of facets to that. I think a lot of people don't even think it's possible. So they don't bother looking like one of the monsters. And I think some people just generally don't like the look. What I don't like is like when I see guys guest pose that are really big and they can't breathe, like they hit 2 poses and they can't breathe. That's a turn off for me personally. Like I don't like the fact that someone can't breathe. And I've been there. I was 260 at 5'7". So I know what it's like to bend over and tie your shoes and stand up and you can't breathe. You're so tired. That's not good. I don't like that. Everybody can do their own thing. I'm just telling you, I don't like that personally. And there's a lot of people I don't think that want to feel like crap. From
John, I had dinner with a popular Mr. Olympia, and they're all popular. It doesn't matter who, but long time ago, and I asked what comes next because he had retired. He goes, dude, he was like 300 pounds. I can't wait to get down to 2 1/4. I run out of breath going up the stairs. My wife has to tie my shoes. You know, hygiene is difficult. Yeah. It's a pain. And, you know, he just couldn't wait. I mean, it served a purpose, but the utility comes into question. I have 4 questions for you that I do at the end because we only have a few minutes left. And you just tell me what you think. But I got one question from a good friend, Lance Stranahan. Lance is interesting because his father was the British Open PGA champion. And his father was the one who introduced weights to the PGA Tour. His father's long since passed. But Lance is a really interesting guy. Question for John, did any elevated hematocrit levels possibly contribute to the blood clot that you had, or was he monitoring that carefully and it had nothing to do with it? The hematocrit elevation often happens in TRT. Is one of the reasons I have not yet started at 57. That's a really good question, I think.
Very fair question. And the honest answer is yes, my hematocrit was elevated a little bit for sure. I want to say it was 51, just out of range. I think the top end is 50.
Yeah.
My hematocrit has, just being honest with you guys, my hematocrit has been elevated for probably 20 years, really? 25 years. It's always been even when I had in 2005 when I almost bled to death from the blood clot that exploded in my colon. I was supposed to get a blood transfusion. I actually told them to not give me one. But I had to recover my RBCs and everything naturally. Well, that's not true. They made me take Epigen. But even then, my hematocrit just barely came into the right range. So I had been taking fish oil and baby aspirin, but I got loose with it. Like I just wasn't consistent. You know, I might take fish oil 2 days. I might take the aspirin 1 day a week, or did 1 time every 2 weeks. I should have been on that stuff all the time. Did hematocrit cause it? I can't say that it did, but I also can't say I don't believe it had anything to do with it. I think that's a very fair question. And I think if I was going to say one thing that concerned me about my blood work, that probably would have been it. I don't concern myself with hemoglobin, really. Hemoglobin can actually save you. And I had a situation where I almost bled to death, but if you know what hemoglobin does and carrying oxygen, it actually can save you. And then if you look at people who live in elevations, high elevations, whether it be in another country or Colorado, you don't see them going out and donating blood all the time.
No.
I don't really worry about that. I don't even really worry about the red blood cell, the erythrocytosis, that much either. If you actually do a lot of research on it, there's another condition where your platelets rise. That's more dangerous. I can't think. I'm going to remember as soon as we hang up. I'm going to remember what that's called. But that's different than erythrocytosis. Like when your platelets go up, everything goes up. That's a problem, and I didn't have that. But hematocrit, that's one factor that I wish was better. But I am taking Plavix now, and I'm taking the baby aspirin. And you better believe I don't miss my doses now. Carvedilol, or something like that's what I take. It's in this generic of Plavix. But so to answer your question, I don't know, but I wouldn't rule it out. I think that's a very fair question. And as far as donating blood, I was very good about donating blood 2-3 times a year. And even then, my hematocrit was always just out of range. It never got me into range. And the reason why I stopped getting my blood, I stopped doing the donations as much, is because my ferritin started going so low, it was concerning. Like the doctors are like, dude, this ain't good. Your ferritin is like, it's really bad.
I think Dr. Witten got it, thrombocytosis.
Yeah, thrombus. I mean, I had a thrombus in the left ascending artery. That's what it was. It was a thrombus. And you can get tested for venous abnormalities or arterial abnormalities. And I had the venous ones taken. That's the Leiden, factor 5 Leiden and all that stuff. Yeah, but I haven't had the arterial ones taken yet, though. So maybe there's an issue there, maybe not. I can't say yes or no because they're super expensive. There's like an anti-phospholipid one. There's a lupus something one. I haven't got those done yet. Anyways, so that's
John, one more question, then we'll do our quick five. Will you compete again?
No, as much as I would love to, I don't think that's a good move. I just don't think that's a good move.
No, just what you'd have to do and push yourself, and
it's not even the training hard that concerns me. It's to be competitive. I know I have to take a certain level of chemicals, and at my age, with what I have riding on the line, it's not worth the risk. So look, I look at everything. I try to be very analytical about what I do, and I look at risk versus reward. What kind of reward do I get out of going to the Toronto Pro Show and competing? I mean, I've competed 70 times in my life. What am I going to get out of that? But now look at what the risk is. My hematocrit.
You are emblematic of your business. I know you. I mean, I know you from here, and I met you once, and I know you from all the media, and you're very well spoken of from a lot of the people. Yeah, I know a lot of people. I've had everybody on this show. Nobody's told me no. I'm sure that's going to happen eventually. But that being said, you've got to remain muscular, I think, and in shape for your business. So you're still going to train hard, obviously.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just not the same degree. Perhaps you're not going to stay at 225 or 230 or anything like that. It's kind of unwieldy to maintain that, or no?
Well, listen, for the last 3 years since I competed, I was only doing HRT, 200 milligrams of test a week. That's all I was doing for 3 years.
Right.
And I was hanging tough at 225 and training hard and pretty big and hard at 225.
But you will not continue TRT in maybe the form of 100 sip per week.
All right. Well, I'll tell you on this show, I haven't told anybody else this yet, but I had my blood work done and my test level was 50. Right.
When? Recently?
Yes.
Wow.
So I've got to reinstitute HRT. 50 puts me at a high risk for blood sugar abnormalities, for another heart attack, for depression.
Correct.
And honestly, I felt like somebody from The Walking Dead. I literally felt like a zombie. It's 50. Wow. I would show you, but it's in the other room.
No, I believe you. That is astounding, I have to say.
That's what that was.
You know the indications. Your average allopath, when you mention TRT, they just throw their hands up, cancer and all these other inane statements. But there are more health indices that are threatened with prolonged low levels of testosterone. You know that, so you got to have them, higher than 50. Obviously, I mean, you stay in a certain window. So,
no, 50 is terrible. That's bad.
That's really bad. Hey, listen, I want to just go into our 5 questions here, and I want to thank you very much. I do want to tell you my most prized possession is my Spider-Man #1 comic book. I bought it for
#1.
I bought it for 25 cents at a flea market when I was 14. That was back in 1977. I bought a stack of them, and the guy said $5 for 20 comics, and I went through the stack, and there it is, and I got it in a safe deposit. And I know. So here are my questions for you. Iron Man or Captain America? Because I know you're a comic book guy. Fantastic Four. Oh, Galactus. Okay. Galactus is coming up, I think, right?
I'm going to show you my favorite comic.
Okay.
This is my favorite comic.
Galactus, the Origin. Oh, you got the Origin, #1. 60 cents. That's what, late 70s?
That one's not real old. Here's.
Oh, I've got that. #2, Silver Surfer.
Here's a good one.
Who's that? Sue? Oh, Submariner. You got the first one, king size special. Very nice.
Yeah.
You got them boarded in plastic too.
I've got some really good ones. So what was your question? Iron Man or who?
John, well, before one of my good friends and members, his name is Ron Garney. He's one of the top Marvel artists, and he's been at it for years and years. In fact, now he gets on the movie sets and he designs like uniforms for them. I go over his house in neighboring town. And it's really, really cool. It's a cool place to go to. He's there creating everything, and he lifts too. My first question: Iron Man or Captain America?
I was never a big Iron Man fan, but honestly, I was never a really big Captain America fan either. But I would say Captain America.
Okay, yeah. Long live America. Marvel versus DC.
Well, I've certainly gravitated much more to the Marvel universe and the Marvel characters. My entire office is toys.
Yeah, I see that. You gotta have fun. You gotta enjoy what you do. If you were to choose a superpower, would it be flight, super strength, or lasers from the eyes?
Well, I would honestly take invisibility if that was an option. But
I was gonna put that down. That's when you're in trouble with your wife.
Yeah. I would probably say strength. It's a toss-up between flight and strength, but I would say strength.
Well, you already kind of got that, but okay, we'll go with that. And finally, we'll get back to a little more science-based for the last one. Since you have a supplement company, it's very successful. What if you had to choose only three go-to supplements? You can only have those 3. What would they be?
Easily, my #1 would be my intra workout, the EAAs. The intra workout, easily. Nothing can help your recovery as much as a good intra. That would easily be #1. I do really like pump products. I do love the pump. I'm an old school guy that loves to see the muscle filled full of blood. I just really like that.
Me too.
That'd probably be #2 in terms of sports supplements.
Are you talking like citrulline and things like that?
Yeah, citrus. So I actually got a new one coming out. It's clinically dosed with citrulline and nitrates. Okay. And another one called Vasodrive, which actually prevents vasopressin from constricting your blood vessels back and keeps them open. Nobody else has got that.
Okay. Great idea.
Nobody else has that combination. We're going to be the only company that has that. Then the other one, probably a good protein powder that is good. Like the ones I made, I have digestive enzymes in it, so it doesn't upset anybody's stomach. It tastes really good. Sometimes you just don't want to eat a lot, so it's nice to have an alternative. Sometimes people are busy, like at work or whatever, so knocking down a shake is about. So the utility of a protein shake, the convenience.
You sound like Evan there on the digestibility. It's important. Robert Thompson asked a couple times about carnitine.
Carnitine is a great supplement. The problem is absorption is not real well unless you take an injectable. Then it's really good, and it's actually good for fat burning. If you're in a hyperinsulinic state, it'll actually push fat in your mitochondria to be burned as energy. But carnitine is an absolutely solid, really good for your heart too.
There are a lot of problems cardiovascular with the use of frequent anti-aromatase inhibitors. What is your advice if you have some estrogen-related issues with TRT? Thank you. You are the best. That's kind of like I don't know. That's not really a broad type of question. It's more of an individualized.
Well, he makes a good point. He makes a good point. I'll just say this: I don't believe it's a good idea to wipe out your estrogen. And then there is some evidence that like some of the anti-estrogens can cause blood clots as well. You better believe I looked into that. But he makes a good point. We're anti-estrogen happy nowadays. That's a bad idea. I don't believe in that at all. I think we do that way too much.
Lance makes a point about Captain America. He is advanced with the anabolic super soldier serum, so that's kind of neat. So I guess he's
that's probably why I picked him over Iron Man.
An early steroid there. Hey John, how can people? Hey, are your products in? Well, geez, I guess GNC just filed bankruptcy, 1,200 stores this week. So I don't know if they're even still viable. Are your products? Can you find them in retail, or is it?
Yeah. Where do you live at? Where are you guys at?
I'm in Connecticut, Greater New Haven.
Connecticut.
You've been to the Super Gym. I'm right near there. Montanari's powerhouse.
Yeah, there was a store in Avon.
Yeah, Avon's not too far. Everything is close. It's a small state, so everything is kind of close.
Yeah, but the Avon store used to be called. They changed their name. What did they used to be called? ANC, I think, Avon Nutrition, but they changed their name. Another really nice guy, but real good group of guys up there. That's the only one I can think of in Connecticut. But obviously you can get them on Amazon, and obviously you can get stuff on granitesupplements.com.
That's great. Let me put that down. Granitesupplements.com. And is that how people can get your training apps as well?
That stuff is all on mountaindogdiet.com. Mountaindogdiet.com. And then for Granite, like if you haven't ever bought from us before, I got a really good discount code for people who are first. It only works one time for you. It's Granite Strong 25 with a capital G and a capital S. So Granite with a capital G, Strong with capital S, 25, all one word. That's the biggest discount code we have. We very rarely run specials, but if somebody wants to try some of my stuff, that's a real good code to save you some money for your first order.
Got it down for you, John. Really want to thank you. This was fun. People really loved it. There's still questions coming in, but we can go back and how about North Dakota? Again, like he said, Robert, Amazon. You can go online and pick the stuff up, and I'm sure John is going to be working on distribution because his line will only grow. John, I want to thank you. Any parting shots or words for the people?
No, man.
Going forward.
I appreciate it. I hope it was helpful and some people can get some benefit from it. And no, our products are not made in China. So I just hope that you guys can get something out of it. And I always respond to emails. My email is mountaindog1@live.com. I often miss the DMs on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not the best at seeing them. They come in so fast, I miss them. But I always answer all my emails, and I do a decent job responding to my YouTube. I get on my YouTube twice a day, and I go through everything. I'm probably the only guy that does that.
John, what's the name? Is it John Meadows or is it Mountain Dog?
The YouTube is Mountain Dog 1. My Instagram is Mountain Dog 1. My Facebook, I'm on there sometimes, once or twice, 3 times a week. But my YouTube, I'm really proud of that. So if people could tune into my YouTube, I'd appreciate it.
Well, listen, again, I want to thank you because I really think you're one of the outstanding people out there. And I often these days, I think almost everybody sucks. I mean, that's not inherent. You don't have to suck. I do a lot of things. Hopefully sucking is not one of them. But I really want to thank you. People really look forward to this. We had a great response, especially for during the day on a Thursday. It's not like the high time for Facebook marketing right now. John, I want to thank you again. I wish you good health. And you're happy to play with your kid. You're with your kids every day. You take them out. Do they always eat ice cream every day, or is that just like one?
No, that's a special treat.
Okay. All right. Hey, and where are you in Ohio, John?
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. Oh, you must know my friend, good friend, the big promoter. I've had him on here.
Lieberman?
Yeah, Dave Lieberman.
Yeah, everybody knows Dave.
Yeah, big Dave. What a good guy. And Aaron, Dr. Witten is ordering your EAA right now. Dr. Witten, really smart power lifter, bodybuilder, doctor. He's in Arizona now, originally from Arkansas, but he doesn't want me to tell anybody that for some reason. But hey, John, thanks again. I'll shoot you a message. I'll shoot you this, and I want to thank you again. Hopefully we can have you back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
I appreciate it.
Be well. Thanks, everybody.